In the next hour, we want to put a smile on your face, elevate your endorphins, and bring you happiness. Welcome to Say Yes, Be Happy with Nathalie Botros. We spend so much of our lives chasing happiness, it might just be where you least expect it to be. Nathalie and her guests are going to show you how and where to find it. And now, your host, Nathalie Botros.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nathalie Botros, your host. Welcome to my podcast, Say Yes, Be Happy, where each week I interview another guest about another topic on our daily life. And both of us, me and my guest, we try to find the silver lining, the happiness in our lives. This week, we're going to talk about sex. And I have a special guest for this week, as usual. She is a certified sex educator, creates seminars for women and men. She's also author of 5 books. Her books are How to Be a Great Lover, How to Give Her Absolute Pleasure, The Big O. I mean, we have to talk about that. The Great Lover Playbook, and Hot Mamas. Her books have sold over 3 million copies worldwide, translated into 28 languages, and represented in over 60 countries. She's joining me to share her expertise and discuss about sex and happiness, answer my questions and yours, actually. Please welcome Lou Paget. Hi,
Thank
Lou.
you. Hello. It's good to be here.
I know, we're planning this for the last month to have you on my show, and we did it. I'm very excited. So, excuse me?
We're ready.
We're ready. So let's start from the beginning. How did you decide to get into the field of sex education and therapy?
As an educator, well, I was looking for the information for myself. And I have a hard sciences background. So biology, botany, microbiology, zoology, as I say, all the good stuff. Because I like to know how things work. So I was looking for information for myself. I mean, if you think about it, we're all born of sex. It's where we all come from. Yet it's like one of those conversations that it's a language that we have to learn without being taught the language. And I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go see what I can find for me. Because the main sources that I was looking at, and this was 20 years ago, was porn.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is someone else's fantasy. It's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit in those positions. First off, they don't work. And secondly, they're really uncomfortable. And it's not reality. So I started asking my friends, usually after a couple of adult beverages, what they did best or what someone did best for them. And like in any area, when someone is giving you the real goods or if they're trying to embellish, they're trying to sell themselves. So I would ask, and here's the thing, if you ever have to ask a tough question, sit beside someone, don't stare directly at them, because any animal, that's way too aggressive.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Sit beside them and just ask. And they will invariably tell you what they know. So people started sharing with me what their best ideas were. And I was collecting them. And I'm like a sponge. I basically only have to hear something once and it's downloaded. So my friends started saying, where did you get this information from? And I said, from so-and-so or from so-and-so. And some of the best information that I got was from my gay friend, Brian, who I said, okay. I was looking for information straight from the horse's mouth. And that's how it got started. And then people found out that I had the information and they said, you've got to share it with others. I'm like, no. I'm not telling people I know this much about sex. And they said, why? And I said, listen, I'm not a PhD. I'm not an MD. So they're going to be thinking, I've been doing all of this stuff. And I'm not going to put my, good girl thing on, have it torn apart.
Of course.
I just wanted to know for me. So when I first started doing my seminars, I did them very, very privately. No one knew who I was. It was sort of like an underground thing that you had to know someone who knew someone in order to get into the seminars. And they were like that for 3 years until I live in Los Angeles, and until I was at something and someone said, Lou, do you realize that someone is trying to do your seminars? And that made me so mad. I'm so furious, not because, hey, listen, I can't do everything everywhere. But what I realized is they're not going to do it with the same heart and the same science behind it and the same attitude that I had. And so that was when I went public, that I was doing these seminars. And it happened to be at a woman's 40th birthday party during a high tea at the Peninsula Hotel.
Love it.
And
So
that was
you went from speakeasy seminars, let's say, to like you were out there.
I was out there, and it was literally, there's a group of women, we're sitting at this table, big long table, and these women at the end, and I got there and I was a little late. I was wearing, sweater, jacket, whatever. And these women said, do you know that the woman who does those seminars is here? And I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, I know it's me. Let's see who they think it is.
Yeah.
So they looked down the table, and there was a woman who had a very deep cut décolleté and, push-up bra, everything, was on display. And they're thinking, oh, well, it might be her. And I thought, well, if I didn't know it was me, who would I think it is? So that's one of those stereotypical things that we have, that anyone who knows a lot in this area is going to have a certain look. And after they had chosen who they thought it was, after my next, last little sandwich that I had, I said, ladies, it's me. And they were like, what? I said, no, I said, it's me. They were like, don't even look like that person. And when my first book came out, I called up my father and I said, Dad, I need to let you know there's a book that's coming out. It's in my name, and it's about my seminars that I do. They're about oral and manual techniques in the area of sexuality. And my dad is silent on the phone, but parents know their kids, right? Yeah. So then I said, Dad, this is information from my seminars, and it's going to be coming out. I want you to hear from me what it's about, so that when people ask you, you can say, well, she told me. And my father's only comment was, well, I don't believe I'm going to be reading it. I said, don't worry, Dad, you're not the target market.
That's great.
So I got into it because I wanted the information for me that was accurate, and I could blend the science with it. And that was how it got started. And I have a way of taking the really complex subjects and making them simple. And my younger sister says, oh, you've done that your whole life. I said, I have? She says, yeah, you always have. I said, oh, it's the things that we do the most easily that we often don't give ourselves credit for. And that's the thing that can make people happy. Take credit for the things you do most easily, because for someone else, it's not easy, and that can make you happy.
Oh, I love that. So let's talk about those exciting books. Your first book, How to Be a Great Lover, it was actually advice for women to give pleasure to men, right?
Yes.
And then the second one,
okay,
for people who can see, like she's showing, like it's a great book. And then the second one is like how to give her absolute pleasure. And then this one is like advice for men to please their woman.
Well, it's kind of like, if you have the operational body parts, this can be used by women for women. If you have if you're in a gay relationship, which it has, this one could be used, for
a great
men.
lover. Yeah.
This one. So, but the thing that made them the best sellers that they are is the illustrations on how to do the manual techniques.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So they're step by step. And sometimes what people will do, they
will have the book on the bed with them.
Holding the book like this, it's like, honey, rub your hands, they're often cold.
That's so cute.
Okay, no, and then it goes, okay, do this, do this, do this. And they do it step by step. And it's like dance steps, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to know the entire choreography of something in order to enjoy dancing a particular way. But you can also observe someone dancing and go, oh, I think I'm going to try that. That's what this is. And I did them as line drawings okay, this is how to give her absolute pleasure. Ta-da.
Yeah.
And the little cherry on top. And by the way, these are not my lips.
Yeah.
And then the big O, orgasms. All of these three were done with line drawings so that when people looked at them, they could see a figure, but it wasn't a human body. So they weren't going to go like this. Oh my God, it's a body.
It doesn't look like porn, let's say. Like it's like
exactly.
You feel more at ease.
Yes. So it's like hands and they're just line drawings. But when I did Hot Mamas and the Great Lover Playbook, those are for couples. So I did them with gray. They were done with gray color, sort of like it's you can see. There's a great one to show.
Yeah.
I came up with
Well, most of our listeners, they cannot see, but they can like get the book and see, and imagine,
Dennis grayscale. Anyways, so the books literally came one after another because people said, if you're doing this here, you've got to do this.
Exactly. I have to complete.
Like any entrepreneur, I'd be like this. Okay. I come from an entrepreneurial family. I was like, okay, that can be done. Okay. But when I got asked to do the first men's seminar, I've never been with a woman. So, I don't know, what you do with women. I know what I do with me. So my older sister is gay. So after I hung up the phone, making the arrangements for my first presentation for a bachelor party, I called up my older sister and I said, okay, you're gay. You're with women. What do I need to know? She told me. And I was like, okay, good.
That's great.
This is good information. And my gay friend Brian is the one who told me the things to do with men, which is why my first book was dedicated to him, Brian Thalheimer. Yeah. So the books literally took on a life of their own.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the orgasms book came out of people asking me, I'm having this happen. Is that okay? I'm having this happen. I have an orgasm when my partner is stroking the inside of my thigh. What is that all about? Or I have an orgasm when I'm lying on, a massage table. They're not touching me anywhere, genitally, but what can what is this? And so I started asking one of my mentors, Beverly Whipple, who, along with Lattice and Can, wrote and created the G-spot. They named the G-spot for Ernst Grafenberg, for the tissue differentiation area. And when I asked Beverly, I said, Beverly, I need to know, I'm going to be looking at writing a book about orgasms. And she had always given me great guidance in the field of sexuality. So when that happened, I said, okay, I'll do a book on orgasms.
That's amazing.
Because people were saying, they were asking me, am I okay? And I'm like, well, did you enjoy yourself first? And then I put it, and it's not that everyone has to have, women can have a lot of different types of orgasms.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that because like on the interview, you were saying women had 10 types of orgasms and men 8. Wow.
Yeah. And what it is that they're not having them all at the same time, but it means that there's different areas of the body that can be stimulated. And depending on how your nerve system operates, it can be highly pleasurable for you. So for, women, some women can have orgasms strictly from kissing, from the mouth. And if you think about it, when you are highly, highly, aroused, and that would have been something that would have happened like in the 40s and the 50s where they could not go on to intercourse for fear of pregnancy or, not being a virgin or for whatever, reasons. But a woman can have an orgasm strictly from kissing, from nipple stimulation, same thing for men, the clitoris, obviously, the urethra, which is surprising to people, but it shouldn't be, because the urethra is surrounded on 3 sides by the clitoris, because the clitoris is more like like there's a bulb up here and then it comes down with 2 legs. Mm-hmm. So it's much bigger than most people have any idea. And that was a paper that was presented. That was something I can talk about with Beverly Whipple. The urethra, so here we go, mouth, nipple, breast, clitoris, urethra, the G-spot area, the anterior fornix erotic zone, that's further back up into the vaginal vault, the cervix itself. For some women, it's very deep penetration. And there's actually 2 sets of nerves in the pelvic area for both women and for men that can be stimulated. One is the pudendal nerve system, and the other is the pelvic hypogastric nerve system. So, and that's why a G-spot orgasm feels very different from a clitoral orgasm, because the clitoris is innervated, meaning the nerves, by the pudendal nerve system. And the G-spot area and the anterior fornix erotic zone and the cervix are the pelvic hypogastric, which has a more bigger pushing out feeling of stimulation. Then there's anal stimulation for some, highly pleasurable. And for many women, how that gets eroticized is during pregnancy if they can't have intercourse, or if they're in a culture where they have to maintain virginity prior to marriage, they will have anal intercourse, and that happens worldwide.
Yeah.
Then there's zone orgasms, which is an area not typically considered erotic. Then we have fantasy orgasms, and these are women who can orgasm just by fantasizing. And someone my friend goes, I want to know about that seminar. How can we have and then there are core orgasms, which that's a new one. All of the core work that people are doing now, like with core aerobics and everything. Think about that. It's got it's very aerobic, and then you've got the strengthening of the core, and it usually happens after a strong aerobic workout, and then when they're doing crunches. And what are the things that power orgasms? Blood and oxygen. So when you've done a strong aerobic workout, you've got more there. And hello, thank you. And these women, I had one woman who said she was military, and she said, the last thing I was going to let anybody know is that I was having an orgasm while I'm doing my workout.
I mean, that's revolutionary. Listeners, this is a good excuse to work out.
Exactly.
Lou, I think we're going to take a short break and then come back. We're talking with Lou Paget about your sexual happiness, health. And after the break, we'll continue. But I want to talk about that workout orgasm. That's very interesting. So see you in a bit. Thank you.
You're listening to Say Yes, Be Happy. To reach our show today, we invite you to phone in to 1-866-472-5788. That's 1-866-472-5788. Or send an email to bvg@thebon-vivantgirl.com. Now, back to Say Yes, Be Happy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Nathalie Botros, your host, and I'm talking with Lou Paget. Just before the break, we were talking about the 11 ways of women can get orgasms. And the last one was a big revealing shocker that if you work out, if you do crunches, you can get an orgasm. So it's possible. So maybe it's a good motivation to move your body and to do some crunches.
Yeah.
So,
and it's something that it surprises most people when it happens.
Of course. I'm like, no kidding. You don't expect. That's a surprise orgasm. So what about men? They have as many orgasms, or
no, they're not. Their physiology isn't as complicated as ours. So that they're not able to have as many internal. They can do mouth, nipple, breast. It's rare. It's not. These are not necessarily common, but they do happen. And when I wrote The Big O, I wanted to have people know that what they were having happen was normal, and other people had it happen. And Beverly Whipple, who was one of my mentors, she is an expert in the area of female orgasm. And I sent my manuscript to her, and I said, Beverly, can you vet this for me? And she came back and she said, Lou, you haven't missed a thing, which was very high praise. And again, for both of us, we want to make sure that we're giving people the science behind things, and that it makes them feel comfortable, and it doesn't have them feel like there's something odd about them.
Of course.
You're okay. So for men, mouth, obviously, nipple, breast area, penis, no kidding, anal, the prostate, and that is that is going into the man's rectum, and then having your finger with a come here motion onto the prostate. And the reason the prostate is so sensitive, on either side of it are the nerves that literally allow the blood flow to go into the penis and engorge the penis. So for many men, that stimulation is highly pleasurable and has an orgasm that is even bigger than just normal, manual stimulation or, whatever stimulation of the penis. They can also have zone orgasms, where, again, an area not typically associated with being genital or erotic. They can have fantasy orgasms as well. And, and then they have blended orgasms for both for both women and for men. So you might have two areas being stimulated at the same time that will create, and most times for women, it's vaginal G-spot or clitoral G-spot. And for men, prostate and penis.
Okay.
So it means that for me, I want people to know their bodies operate, uniquely to them. There were researchers by the name of Hartman, Fithian, and Campbell, who were just north of San Diego, and they coined the term orgasmic fingerprint, which I think is great. And what it means is that this is why if you watch porn, to think that you're supposed to have everything happen a certain way, it's nonsense. Basically, the positioning in porn isn't doing things for the women in the first place. It's going for the money shot. Thank you. But the orgasmic fingerprint means that's how uniquely you orgasm. And, not that I've asked in great detail, but I have an identical twin sister. And the things that she fantasized about are not what I was interested in. The things that she did for her own self-pleasure are not what I would do. But when I wrote my books, I never talk about me, ever. It is about everyone else. I want that information. Again, when you're talking in this subject area, if you talk about yourself, people are imagining you doing it, and their brain goes like this, goes outside of their body and back in. But I want the information to be for the person who's hearing it or reading it. That's why the line drawings in the first 3 books.
Yeah. So you raise a lot of questions in my head. The first of all is the topic of people learning about sex on porn or on those books where it's impossible. They think that the first time someone can have pleasure, a woman, her first time she will have orgasm, or every time a woman can come to climax. So all these kind of ruins the healthy sexual life of people, because they believe in this. That's the only, they all have access to it. There are so many free porn websites, and then it's not normal. So what do you think about that?
Well, we got, a couple of layers of misinformation that get in the way of people having pleasure and being happy with what they're doing with their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
First off is the stuff coming out of any movie that makes it seem like all you have to do is get a woman up against a wall, and in 2 minutes she's going to have a whipping orgasm or something, or they're going to fall on the bed and everything's going to be this. That is, the rom-coms, listen, they can't take the whole amount of time in the movie to show how long it takes for, a woman to receive the pleasure that she wants. They have to do it within 30 seconds or give a suggestion of it in 30 seconds. Then with the adult stuff, you've got people who are, the main thing that's going on now are the cam girls they are at home, so they're safer. They've got their clientele and they will ask them to do particular things. But I've also had, cam girls who have said, I'm not doing, this stuff anymore. They're asking me to do so many degrading things to myself. I'm not doing this. But if people think that watching someone else's sexual, behavior is going to help them, so be it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if it's a scripted thing, it's almost like thinking that reality TV is your world. It's not. That's not real.
Of course.
And when people are saying, oh, I'm going to record myself and see what I look like, you might not be so happy.
It doesn't look that good.
No. We don't have the filters and we don't have the, but there are many times that people do, record themselves, so be it. My comment to them is, whatever you do not post it anywhere. No. Hello,
of course. So the question is what is the right way to learn and to have a good sexual life? If there are any tips that you can advise to our listeners about having a good sex life, basically.
Bottom line is, you have to know about your own body first off. If you don't know what is pleasurable for you, you're not going to be able to guide someone. Mm-hmm. And, our sexuality is a language that we have to learn. We're not all born speaking Mandarin or speaking, Hindi or speaking English. We all have to learn. And our sexuality is the same thing. But typically we learn from our equally ill-informed friends and peers. And then we have to try and unlearn things. One of the reasons why most men are so fast during sex is because that's how they learned when they were masturbating. Because the last thing they wanted to have happen was to have their mother catch them.
So it's like fast. They have to like run.
Good. Or they're in a shower.
Yeah.
And they've got to make sure, like, can't have anyone,
Yeah.
seeing what I'm doing here. So everything is in speed up. So they learn to do everything, have a very fast response when they're younger. And also, it's like the wind blows and they get an erection. But then they spend the rest of their life slowing it down. And, who wants to spend their time trying to do math problems when you're in the middle of having sex? So that, you're focusing on it. But you have to know your own body first. Then you have to have someone who is a partner that will listen. You can go to different places. Listen, there's many different people who are sex educators. There's a lot more of them now who are certified. But someone who goes on and is telling you all about their own sexual experience, I would be leery of, because that is, as we say, an N of one. It's it's a population of one.
Okay.
Okay, that's their experiences. But it's a layered learning curve. It's not simple. It's, it can be simplified, but for most people, they're going to have to learn what they know best themselves. And for women, it's often by the time they're in their 30s that they are, okay, they're more confident about their body. They're more aware of what they like.
Mhm.
And because most times for young women, they're learning from someone who might be a year to 2 years older than them. And I was brought in one time to Cosmo magazine when Kate White was the editor-in-chief. And she said at one point, we have to declare a moratorium on Lou's work because we have 7 of the articles this month and she's in every one of them. We have to. So they brought me into their boardroom and they were just firing questions at me. So, I was in New York doing a seminar. And then I said, okay. I said, ladies, may I ask you a question? And they said, sure. I said, what's the number one question you get asked? And it was, how can I have an orgasm during intercourse? Now, the average age of the Cosmo demographic is much younger than people had anticipated. It's skewed much younger. So they were 14, 15. And by the way, at that time, it was the #1 read magazine on college campuses by males.
By males. Interesting.
Because they wanted to know what women wanted.
Okay.
Like in Britain, the 2 columns that are the most popular, and it used to be the most popular in the newspapers. One was the sports section, obvious, and the second was the agony aunt column. The way the women write in to get advice from the woman.
Yeah.
That was the second most popular column.
Okay.
So if the girls are being told when they're younger this statement, well, all of my other girlfriends had orgasms. No, they didn't. When I do my
true, and then like these young girls, they think that they're frigid or there's a problem with them because
there's something wrong with them.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
is-
Because the expectation is so high from them, it's so unreal that it's not.
You're supposed to enjoy, this being done to you and that being done to you, and it isn't enjoyable. And he can get it up, great, but that's nice. But he isn't doing the things that she needs in order to have her sexual happiness. And it takes a while before women realize, and they speak to someone else and go, did this work for you? And they're like this, no. And that's when they start getting the confidence and realizing, oh, this is nonsense. But finding a source that will tell you the truth. That's the biggie. And that's what people came to me for. Is I would say, okay, this is, and the one question I will never answer, what is the average number of times people should be having sex in a week or in a month? And you know why I won't answer it? Because whatever the answer is, someone's going to get beaten up.
Yeah.
Someone's going to say, well, she said. Like,
And
no,
we
no.
didn't do it. Yeah. No,
She
it's
is-
true.
He is not saying. And I say, listen, it depends on the couple, depends on the person.
It depends on your time, on your schedule, I guess.
Exactly. Depends on do you have the time? For many people, one of the most seductive thing someone can do for them is to let them sleep, particularly if they have kids.
Yeah. So you see clients, they come like alone, in couple, like you have most of your clients are women, men, like how does it work? Let's
Well,
say I'm calling you and I want to be your client, and how it works.
they can do it. Usually it's like a Zoom call or
Mhm.
can be a phone. Some people are a little more shy. But I often, if it's a couple who want to have something spoken about, I will speak to them separately. And the reason for that is they will often tell me something that they really should be telling their partner.
And
And I will ask one question. Have you told them this? And invariably they'll be like this. No. I said, well, you need to. You really need to. And say it to them as you said it to me. So I will have people, one-on-one, and I will let them know. I'll do a 15-minute phone interview with them to see whether or not this is something I can help them with.
Mhm.
I don't want them to waste their time or their money.
Of course.
I mean, if it's a physical thing that needs to be addressed, they may not even know that. If it's something that is more of dealing with past things that they're having happen, and I'll use an example of a woman who was 50 years old. Her husband had died. She was a very successful attorney. She phoned me and she wanted to know, how she can go about, getting herself back into, dating. And she was actually seeing someone at that time who was one of her husband's best friends, who he was divorced. And she was like, I cannot believe. She said, this is just not right. And I was like, why is it not right? And she said, I have such lust in my heart for this man. I said, do you not think he'll think that's great?
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
It's like, hallelujah, someone thinks this way about me. I said, he would love to know that. And she was like, he would? I said, yes. And I said, who told you that lust was not okay? And she's just said very softly, my mother. I went, oh, okay. Here we go. Let's unwrap this one. Your mom didn't give you the accurate information here. You feeling this way about this man. She said, I never felt about my husband this way. I said, so you didn't. So you do now. I said, all you need to know is that this is a healthy, something that someone would love to know you feel that way about them. And it wasn't until I said, you're okay. And this is fine. No one had ever told her that because she had been raised in a very strict religious background. And that is one of the things that I take a lot of exception to, how religion deals with female sexuality. The number one thing most religions want to do is control female sexuality. So
Yeah.
number one thing. They don't want to control the guys, but they want to control the women.
Yeah. It's true. It's some religions can kind of block it, I presume. But I mean, in a couple also, it's like, I think the most important thing is communication between them, as you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Being able
So
to
exactly. So we're about to take our second break. Listeners, you can still call us. We have one more segment left, or you can send me an email or send a question after on Facebook. But just after the break, we will talk, because if you have no questions, I have some questions, more questions for Lou. So see you in a bit, and thank you.
You're listening to Say Yes, Be Happy. To reach our show today, we invite you to phone in to 1-866-472-5788. That's 1-866-472-5788. Or send an email to bvg@thebon-vivantgirl.com. Now, back to Say Yes, Be Happy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Nathalie Botros, your host. I'm talking with Lou Paget about finding your happiness in your sexual life. And just before the break, she was telling us about the clients that she gets. Like the main problem that they have most of the time is the lack of communication. And now, during the break, I just got a question for you, Lou. Someone is asking, I know every woman is different on what they like, but do you have any recommendations on how to find someone orgasmic fingerprint?
Well, and here's the thing. Yes, each woman orgasms uniquely to her, but again, it depends on where she might be in her cycle, how stressed she is, how much sleep she's had, if she has, any alcohol in her system or something, it's going to change what her response pattern is. So knowing, that you have one way of doing something, and here's the example I was going to share with you. I had a couple who came to see me. I was doing part of a show, and they were people, the producer had met them in their church. They were a young couple, just had a daughter who was about 9 months old, and they both had been previous, star athletes. So great bodies, great shape, had great sex all the time until they had their daughter. And now they're not having any sex. They're doing a parenting bed. That's one of the best, birth control devices known to man, is to have a child sleep in your bed with you.
Obviously.
Obviously. And they said, they wanted to she said, I want to get back to the good loving that we had. And so again, I spoke with her first, and I asked her, I said, what is it? She said, we just don't have time. We used to have time. And I said, would you be interested in trying any marital aids / vibrators? And she was like, absolutely. And I said, okay. Because I said, if you have limited time, you don't have a lot of time to do buildup. I said, you want to just, get to the pleasure between the two of you. She said, that is exactly what I want. So the husband comes in. Now they're both very religious. And I said to him, what are the things you do? And he goes, well, I do. This is so male. I just wanted to hug him. He was so cute. And he goes, well, I do this. And then I go to this. And then I go to this. And then I go to this. And I said, my God, that's exhausting. He said, well, it does take time. And I said, would you be interested, or would you consider using some marital aids? And he goes, oh, no, not at all. No, that's for other people. I said, would it surprise you to know that your wife said she absolutely would use them? He was like, what? He said, yeah. I said, you guys don't have a lot of time. And I said, if your baby is sleeping, you have limited time before the baby wakes up again. And yeah, I got a little video from him the following 2 weeks afterwards. And he was like this, oh, whoa. And he was like this, da, 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 da. He was doing his happy dance.
Yeah.
He said, we are back to having our sex life. He said, and that's the thing. To find someone's orgasmic fingerprint, you have to know lots about them. You have to know what type of pleasure is the best for them. Is it manual? Because for most women, they have their best orgasms as a result of manual or oral stimulation, not from penile vaginal. And also, it's mainly for women if the woman is on top, because the person on top is the one who's controlling the motion. But it's the heat and the moisture and the constant stimulation that is what works with manual and oral. And one of the best oral techniques ever is called the Kiven method, which is in Hot Mama's Great Lover Playbook and Orgasms. And it's, instead of going straight on between a woman's legs, it's on the side. So you're stimulating actually over the clitoral hood, which is where the clitoral nerves run.
Yeah.
And it's a constant stimulation. So
yeah, so it's like creating the energy around, let's say, and then finally focusing. Is that it?
Well, here's the thing too. For many women, it's they want to have the stimulation constantly, but they also need to be able to give a feedback loop. And so we're thinking about the orgasmic fingerprint. You're going to use a finger on the perineum area, which is the area between the entry into the vagina and the anus. That is the area when you are stimulating with your tongue that you will feel pre-orgasmic contractions. That's your immediate feedback loop. And it is one of the fastest and quickest ways to have a woman orgasm during oral sex. And it's called the Kiven. Kiven's not a person. I don't know who Kiven is. Dr. Paget is the one. I heard about this at the World Association of Sexology in Paris. And I was like, wow, what's this? And I said, I need to know. But it's something for each person. It depends on, how relaxed they are. Some of the best sex people have is when they're on vacation. Well, no kidding. It's because they don't have any pressure.
Yeah.
They have time to be, do things together. I've had couples who she wanted to do a surprise birthday for her husband's 60th birthday. And he said, well, I want to have great sex. And she's kind of like this. Well, thanks. What have we been having? And so I had her create the ultimate fantasy for him. They were both dancers, so she had legs for days. So I had her get this little sling. She was in the sling. She was in the French maid's outfit. She also had on the little stockings, and she had everything. And he knew nothing about this. This was his surprise. But and also in the world that we're in right now, there's many more variances of what people want to do. Some people want to try kink. Some people want to do kink. And again, it depends on how they define kink.
Exactly what I was going to ask you. Like kink can be
a range of different things.
Exactly.
And, some people want to be in a monogamous relationship. Some people want to be in an open relationship. Some people want to be in polyamorous relationship. But open and polyamorous relationships, they require a lot of negotiation and honesty. And you can't just bring someone in, that you've been having, an affair with and say, I want this relationship to be open. Some relationships open and then they close. And also, as Dr. Helen Fisher talks about, women's sexuality is much more variable throughout a woman's life. And women are much more, prone and much more predilection to bisexuality than men are. And the reason, one of the things that they don't talk about this in a lot of sex research is because sex research has had such a male bias. And it hasn't been about, when Beverly Whipple, who's one of my mentors, when she wrote one of her books, The Science of Orgasm, they were looking at the research and there were like 17,000 research articles on male sexual issues. There were 5 for women, 5,000 for women. Who, if we're into a straight world, who are these men having sex with?
Themselves, maybe.
I don't know. It's like, and the thing about, affairs, majority of affairs occur because of someone's paying attention. They don't occur because of sex, the majority of them.
I think emotional affairs is worse than sexual affairs because you fall in love, basically. So,
yeah. And, when I wrote the Great Lover Playbook, it was based on another one of my mentors, Bernie Zilberfeld, who said, he gave me the definition of great lover, that these are not necessarily people who are having intercourse. Some of them may not be able to, but it's how they perceive themselves as a great lover. And, the stories of people telling me how my husband and I hold you completely responsible for our baby girl. It doesn't get better than that. A woman telling me that her husband, her sister, who was very, very much wanted to have a form of penetration with her husband, who happened to be in a wheelchair and not be able to have an erection. They were married, they had a son, but she wanted this. And she came to see me. We went through all the things that she could do. The number one thing was having a thigh harness on his leg with a dildo in it so that he could hold her and she could have the feeling of penetration. That's what she was wanting and missing. And so she was like, oh, goody. She went back down to, where they lived. They were very high profile. And her husband was like this. He didn't even want to hear about it. And she was like, I felt like I'd just been handed, this box of all these treasures. A month later, she comes home. Her husband's sitting on the couch. He had seen all the books that he'd been given, the brochures and everything. And he had then gone out and bought everything that he wanted. And she was like this, wow. And my friend said, I want you to know you saved my sister's marriage. But people will come and ask, and what they want is they want someone who will tell them what, is this okay? What's the science behind it? A couple flew out from New York to see me and they wanted to know, they actually wanted me to watch them having sex and critique them. And I said, I wouldn't do that. I said, but I know, some, therapists, who would, but what they wanted was they were outside of their own environment. They were having an affair. The phone rings and she looks over and she goes, it's your wife. I'm like, oh, great. But, whatever floats their boat, and if it's consensual, it's like the kink world,
Of course, yeah.
it's
No,
safe, sane, and consensual. Go for it. The happiness hormones that occur with, when we are being intimate. And I prefer to use, the term intimate with things, because it is something that makes intimacy is something that you have with someone. Sex is often something you do, but when you are intimate with someone, it's something more about them.
So we don't need to have great sex to be happy. We have to have intimacy.
Well, I would say that if you want to have everyone's great sex is their definition, but I don't want people to feel they have to have X amount or do this or feel this way or have, the image of what they'll see in a romance comedy. That's not the real world.
Mm-hmm.
The real world is your world, however it occurs, and many of us were given really bad information growing up, the control the female sexuality, but what people want is they want to know that their body can work. And anyone who has had an injury or has had some type of, impairment, those people are very creative with what they do when it comes to toys or positioning. And they're very aware of, if they have to take medications. Medications are one of the biggest things that wipes out people's libidos. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety, they are, and for some people, it wipes them out completely and it never comes back. Genital anesthesia, they don't feel anything, they can't orgasm. And, if it's really hard to find a study on it because so many people have so many medications that they're being given that you can't really tease it out. But Dr. Stuart Shipko in Pasadena is the one who put together a paper with another woman on couples with this. And that's something that many times people don't realize. And I sadly had one woman who she didn't know, and I didn't know, that she was on antidepressants, and that is what had wiped out her libido. She said, I couldn't feel anything, I can't orgasm. And I didn't know at that time that that's what it was linked back to.
Yeah.
But,
so we have to, again, I think like everything really is about communication and like putting the information out there. And if you're in a committed relationship, especially, like you don't have to hide, you don't have to be ashamed of it. It's just like talk about it. And then otherwise you can contact Lou. We're about to wrap up. If people want to contact you, how they can find you?
Best way is a simple email, loupaget@aol.com.
Okay. And so listeners, send her, if you were ashamed to ask any questions during this show, just send her your questions, or if you want to have a consultation. And
I'm the only
sad.
Yeah, I'm the only one who.
Perfect.
No one else. There's no stock answers. Everything I try to get to the bottom, and if I can't get the answer, I will know someone who can.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're gonna say goodbye to Lou. I will see all of you, and here that you can listen to me next week on my show. It's gonna be about hypnosis with Jack Elias. And until then, I wish you a great week, and thank you for listening to me. And don't forget to rate and comment me on Apple Podcasts. Have an amazing week. Bye for now.
What do you have to lose? Say yes. Be happy.